January. I'm sort of working out how I'm going to do this video, and no matter how I try and plan it, it's not going to work like that. So I'm just going to do this completely off the top of my head. Just going to make it up as I go along, and just think about if I was growing this, what would be helpful to know. So it's going to be a long video. I don't know. Could be 40 minutes. Could be 2 hours. Could be 3 hours. I don't know. I'll just try and get as much in as I can. So it might be a good point to maybe watch it a couple of times, or stop it and take some notes if they're viable to you. Because it's a lot of this process to me. It's a natural thing that I don't tend to have to think about. It's trying to actually think about it. It's hard to come up with the answers for it, to get it in understandable terms. So there's everything from growing durations, and how I work out, like trying to grow one crop and then follow it with another one immediately, sort of thing, getting things ready, how you can kind of forward plan that way. Probably a little bit on planning my plot. I've not planned anything in my plot, to be honest. I've sown the seeds that were in my last video and not started anything else. So we'll crack on with that. Right, we're going to have a look at some growing duration of some things. A kind of sort of rule of thumb that I tend to follow. I'm not saying it's right, but it kind of works for me most of the time. But obviously there's variables: colder weather, colder seasons than normal, or warmer seasons. Warmer, they can be a bit quicker as long as it doesn't go into drought. Obviously colder, things are a little bit slower. So there's all that, if it's slower, it can kind of mess you up a bit. So we'll start off with potatoes. So some of this will be based towards people who've never grown things before, because there's a lot of people that are coming into gardening. It's on some of the social networking, people are coming on asking questions. When can I plant this? When can I plant that? So we'll start off with something like fairly straightforward, like potatoes, because some of them out there will not know. Potatoes are kind of split into, I said, three categories. There is sort of like early main and main crops, but I just split them into three. I just find it's easy to work out that way. So you've got your first, second, and main. Right. First earlies, I say they need, it's only in my opinion, it depends on the varieties and your growing condition, 8 to 12 weeks to grow. Second earlies, I would probably say anything from 14 to 16 weeks to grow. Main crop, 16 to 20 weeks. So, for instance, first earlies I grow Duke of York. There's other ones like Swift, Rocket, Nicola, I think. There's loads. Second earlies I grow, I'll put, usually a good all round for me is Maris Pear, Charlotte, Jazzy. Jazzies can be grown as a first early because I have had them ready quite quick. So that's one that could be ready in between. What are the seconds? Other ones, there's loads. I think there's one called Steamer. That's a big one for Baker. The main crops I grow, usual one, Orla. King Edwards, then you got Sarpo, Mira. To be honest, I mean, they're good for growing Sarpo. I mean, I've got some more coming for this year, but I don't find them that great to eat, to be honest. They're all right, but I mean, there's things like, there's kestrel, which is basically second earlies and main croppers store better than first earlies, but Orla can be grown as a first early as well. There's quite a few main croppers that you can grow as a first early. It's just they're a smaller potato and they haven't got the big size on them, the big storers. Planting dates, depending on your climate, you could plant from March, like I don't put mine out until April, but I do some first earlies in 30 litre pots, which I do sort of February time. So if you've not seen any videos already, I use 30 litre pots, or you can get your potato growing kit bags, anything like that, but I'm just going to treat it like a pot. So this is kind of like a side view of it. So you put some drainage holes in the bottom. Yeah, it helps. Sometimes it's handy to put some in the bottom and some in the side. You want some decent holes. I'd probably say a good 1/2 inch holes, because sometimes if it's touching something like the ground, it can compact underneath and it won't drain. But also, if you've got decent sized holes and it's touching ground, if the roots need to go through and tap into any other soil, they can do. You kind of put probably a good couple of inches of compost on the bottom, and then you nestle 2 seed potatoes in. Obviously your chits pointing upwards, and kind of fill it to here. So if I do like a bird's eye view, that's your pot. You put your bit of compost in the bottom, put your first 2 spuds in that way. If you're going to do 3 spuds, you just split it into 3, but you get a lot of depth of pot that you're wasting, because spuds tend to be nearer the top. So you put a layer of compost in, and then your next layer of spuds would kind of, it just looked like that if you were looking from the side, but from the top you put your next layer of spuds that way. And then, so I'll do it so it kind of looks like that. So I've got 4 potatoes in a 30 litre pot, and then fill that. You can fill it right to the top if you want to, but otherwise, as soon as the leaves start coming through, so all these will start sending multiple stems up, roots will come out, they'll start forming your tubers, whatnot. But as these sort of start appearing, when they get a bit high, I'll keep adding compost in until you can't really add any more in, to be honest, but they will need to be watered, and these need to be grown if you're doing them in pots early. So I'll be doing mine sort of mid-Feb, which will probably be rocket, because they haven't got any Swift in stock. They've sort of said, like, sorry, no Swift, so we're going to send you rocket instead. So, all right, okay. So I've grown rocket before, they're usually all right. So I'll do a mid-Feb, and I expect them to be ready June. Well, I'll put May, June, around sort of 90 to 100 days. Well, you could say 80, depending on your growing conditions. If it's nice and warm and you've got a bit of a heater in your greenhouse or polytunnel, fine, they'll do all right. It's something nice and quick before your tomatoes are going out. Well, that's the way I do it anyway. I need them, so I usually pull them out as it gets to sort of mid-May. It's warm enough outside, because the last frost is sort of mid-May. So as soon as the chance of frost's on, I get them out in some nice sunshine, plenty of daylight, give them good watering. But I usually put a bit of feed in, probably kind of from the beginning of May. I'll start putting a bit of feed in. I like to feed in the last 4 to 6 weeks of a potato plant's sort of life cycle. It just helps bulk. If you use a high potash feed, tomato feed's okay. Anything high potash, it just helps the swelling process. Because the last thing you want is if they dry and then they get some little water, that's how you end up with hollow centres, big splits and stuff like that, because they kind of set and all of a sudden they think, oh, I've got to grow again, and then they can't keep up. So they just grow that fast and they end up with holes or side splits. So that's pretty much all you need to do with spuds. And obviously, if you're growing them in the ground, you know, you'll dig your trench, or you know, dig a hole, and then you'll plant your little spud at the bottom. Put a bit of bloodfish and bone, or a bit of fertiliser in, or some people put a bit of manure. Grass clippings is good. A little bit of grass clippings if you've got some. Not too many though, and that's supposed to help reduce scab. Because scab can be caused if your soil's too sort of, you wouldn't really lime right before you do spuds, even though sometimes, you know, something too acidic can cause like little black specks and stuff like that. But generally, if you're going to lime where your potatoes are going to go, do it sort of like in the autumn before, and grow some brassicas on it. Gets a chance to mellow out, and then you know, this would send up, you'd fill that in, then your tops would come up, and then you'd begin to ridge your soil up, and all your potatoes always end up sort of this area here, you know, when you cut the top off, and you just, that's where you see these big long ridges. You do that with all the varieties, you know. Or if you've got a new plot and you can't be bothered digging around like that, if you really wanted to, you could say that's your soil. Just scuff it and loosen it a bit, nestle a spud in the surface, and just add, bring the stuff in, manure, compost, and just add a big hump on it. You know, straw, grass clippings. You know, for initial, you'll get a crop, because all your spuds will end up in here, and then you'll dig it all in, so all this will get incorporated in the soil when you take your spuds out. They should be fairly clean, to be honest. So that's my sort of view on potatoes. Look at some alliums now. So alliums, garlic, spring onions, normal onions, and then I'll put exhibition onions. Right, spring onion, garlic needs quite a long growing time. You know, if you kind of planted them in October, say if you did October, you'd be pulling them probably June. If you do like me, some January, we're in July. If you do them in March, probably September, maybe August. So I try and, you know, because if you, it's kind of similar with your overwintering onions, to be honest. Obviously, if you're doing onion sets, so I'll go straight to onions here. I'll put a little line for that, in case anyone wants to make a note of that. Spring onions I'll leave open at the moment. Right, so if you're doing sets, you'd sow them either October or sort of March. And there's not a big difference in it, to be honest. These sets will be ready June from that, or they'll be ready July from that. So that's a big gap in date. You know, and I stopped growing the overwinter ones because they used to, sometimes they'd bolt, or you'd have problems, or they just had a bad time, wet, you know, don't like being too wet. If you had a really bad flood, all that work you've put into planting them onions in October could be washed out. So if you're going to do sets, March, you can pinch a bit and start them at the beginning of March in seed trays, and then move them up to the plot to try and pinch a bit of time, which you'll bring them into sort of the beginning. There's not much time, say things catch up. And then if you're doing seeds, so you do onion seeds, so you sow them probably Jan to March, again for sort of possibly June, but I'll go on the side of usual UK weather, which is usually crap. July to September. You know, and they, you know, a good variety like Agro Santero, I'll lift them in July, and they'll easily store until April following year. So you haven't got much time, and if you've had a few gone manky or whatever, you sort of, while you're sorting through them, you chop them, froze them, and they'll see you through your frozen ones. And you can have some spring onions with salads, early salads. Right, your spring onions, you can start, so you can sow them quite often, to be honest, but if I say February, you know, they need a duration of anything between 60 to 100 days, depending on the variety. So if you just pick something straight in the middle of that and just say 80 days. So you can work out, if you sow them, take 80 days. So you could sow them fortnightly or monthly. So I get my little cell trays, like so, all split. I use the 40 cell trays, so they're usually like, you know, about 30 mil square, something like that. A little cluster of, you know, 6 to 10 seeds in each middle of them like that. Once they get about sort of 3-4 inch in a nice little clump, go and put them out about 4 inches apart in a row. You can put them in pots if you want, you know, spread them like that. Or you can broadcast spring onions in a pot. When I plant them out, and then when I harvest them, I just take a bunch. You know, so I mean, I tend to do probably like 20 bunches, as and when. Because you can kind of look, once you think I'm going to start taking them now, that's when I start to sow again. Otherwise, you can end up with too many spring onions and end up going a bit manky. So that's spring onions. Exhibition onions. I'm not an expert at this. There's plenty of people who do a lot better than me. I'm just doing for a bit of fun. I've never shown any veg ever yet. So the exhibition onions, you kind of can sow from October, November. Popular day used to be Boxing Day for a lot of onions, to be honest, but the way seasons have moved, because I mean, even in my lifetime, you know, 20 years ago, you know, well, probably longer than that, probably 30 years ago, in March it was warm, summer was summer. Now it's all gone a bit wrong. It's like everything's shunted forward a month. You know, with the old March is now sort of today's April. So I tend to do mine November, December, and they'll get planted out in April. And I'll harvest them probably August / September. Some people harvest them a bit earlier just for the shows, you know, or you can wait to, because I harvest them because for eating, I don't show them, you know, there's a lot of onion there, and it's when all my tomatoes are ready, I think I'll go and pull an onion, because you don't have to wait till they're ready. If you need an onion, go and pull one if there's one that's usable. You don't have to like wait for them to go and brown and store and that, just pull it out and use it as it is. It's an onion at the end of the day. As with your garlic, if you can feel a bit of garlic big enough and you need some garlic, take it. And if you're growing hardneck garlic, and there's some like a little, when you get a normal garlic, you'll get lots of sort of leafy stems, you know, grow like that. And then you might send like a funny thing up the top here. That's called a scape. Cut that off, chop it up, and you put it in, you know, butter to make garlic butter. Use it for cooking. Nothing wrong with that. That's going to be like the seed spike, if you know what I mean. You get with hardneck quite a lot. I did start having some on my soft necks, but it's perfectly usable. That the bulb might not store as well, but it's just about a bonus if you see some and you've got some early garlic to use. So that's your alliums. There'll probably be things that I'll miss on this, because it's a bit hard to try and explain every aspect. I'm not following anything. This is just completely off the cuff, coming out of my head, this. Peas. I grow, I'm not sure how it's spelled, I think it's H-U, Hurst Green Shaft. It's a second early crop. You know, you've got things like Onward, they're main crops, you get early ones. Early one I used to grow, I think it was I think it was spelled out Feltnum first. I used to sow that in Feb and pick it in May. But the Hurst green shaft is the main one I've tended to do all the time now. Really, I can grow it. I can get 2 runs a year off it. So I'll tend to sow that in March for a June harvest, and then I'll go for a plant out sort of July for a sort of September/October harvest. Sow them in gutters. You can sow them direct if the mice will leave them alone and the pigeons, but protect them. Otherwise, do them in gutters. So that's your peas. Then we go on to things like your beans. I say, you know, peas can handle a little bit of cold. They don't like really hot weather, so you just got to bear that in mind. Along the roots of them, sometimes good to grow a little small crop of radish or something that keeps them roots nice and cool, stops all the moisture from evaporating, because they do need plenty of water while the pods are forming. So we're going beans. I mean, there's also, like, you know, with beans, it has peas. You've got sugar snap peas and Monge 2 and stuff like that. I don't really grow them. But the beans, you've got climbing beans. And then you've got runner beans. The difference between the two, runner beans tend to be more of a flatter pod, climbing beans are more rounder pod. Eating wise, I prefer the climbing beans. But you've also got a dwarf version of these as well. More so the climbing beans, dwarf climbing beans. Variety that I would grow is Cobra. I think there's another one called, what's it called? Can't think offhand. Runner beans, probably Firestorm. But there's all sorts of varieties. There's Lady Di, some Scarlet. I grew one last year, which is a bit of a hybrid of the two, and it was called, I think it was Tender Green. Tender Green it was called, and I'll be doing them again because they were good. They didn't get massive, you know, nice and stringless and everything. So these do not like cold weather. Runner beans will tolerate it a little bit better than the climb beans. Climb beans, if it's exposed, windy, cold drafts, they do well in polytunnels, climbing beans. But nothing to say you can't grow them outside. I wouldn't entertain actually putting them in the ground until probably, in my area, whatever it is, zone 8, I think it is. Can't remember if it's 8A or 8B, but it's northwest England. I would say climbing beans and runner beans, don't put them in the ground outside until I'd probably, to be on the safe side, I'd say 20th of May for me. But I tend to just go for 1st of June. That's when they go out, you know, and then they'll shoot up the canes and all that lot, and then you'll start cropping them probably end of July, beginning of August. It don't take long, and they'll carry on going right up until the frost kill them. You know, the more you pick, the more you get. So the idea is try and get some. You know, you can grow some obviously for big long pods, but get them to about 6 inches. Keep picking them, and they'll keep chucking more out because they want to reproduce, so they will keep chucking seeds out, which is the pod. Obviously, with some beans like Borlotti beans, if you want to save some seed, just leave some pods to overripe. You'll see that you'll feel the beans forming inside them. Pull them off, let the pods dry out, pop your beans out, use them for seed the following year, or store them in jars for your winter soups and stuff like that, and stews or whatnot. you have to soak them for overnight and then boil them. That's another way of storing the beans. I don't tend to do that. I tend to harvest them, chop them, freeze them, blanch them. So that's all the beans. Now, if you're growing up canes, I'd say you want really 8-foot canes. You want to jab them in the ground a good foot to 18-inch really, because they will reach the top and keep cutting the tops, and they'll send more side shoots out. Dwarf beans, they don't get very high. They're not mass produced, but they can produce. If you have a good year. In dwarf beans, there's one called Ferrari. I think one called Primera. There's one I grew a few years ago. I can't remember the name of it. It was great because you can look at the dwarf French beans, and some will expose the beans above the foliage, which is so much easier to pick. There's even some that are like purple pods or even black pods. When you boil them, they go green. They're easy to see, because that's the thing, you always miss some beans when they're green and you're looking through all the foliage. You pull some off and you miss some. And then next time you go back, you've got a big cricket bat swinging around. But you dwarf French beans, the conventional way, you sow them in a block. So you'd sort of kind of stagger them, in a block planting. You can sow these direct up until probably middle of July. And they don't get very high, dwarf French beans, possibly, a foot to 18-inch. And they kind of help support the self, even though sometimes it might be an idea just to put like a peg in the ground and just run some strings along like that, just low down. It just help, because as the leaves lay on top of them. So say for instance you'd have your plant growing up, you'd have your leaves, your little branches coming off like that, and then you get little clusters of pods and stuff. You've got some strings that are kind of supporting there, so it just helps to hold it. But if you treat your seedlings a little bit mean, if they've sort of like been in somewhere where there's no wind or anything, the minute you put them outside, they get a gust of wind, they'll be over. Another way you can mimic that is when you go into like your polytunnel greenhouse, you see, just gently waft your hand across the top of them. Commercially, they put fans on to blow like a draft, and it sends a hormone to the stem to sturdy up. And it's a problem when you sow things too early when light levels aren't good. They can get tall and leggy, and leggy seedlings, they've got off to a bad start. Sometimes it's better off to go, right, I'm going to start again, than try. Different with things like tomatoes, you can go, it's a bit leggy. You can keep planting tomatoes deeper and deeper. So we'll go on to tomatoes now. The old toms. So I sold mine. You can sow them probably. I'm going to do them in January. Right, so look, it can be a bit early. Peppers, January, yeah, but tomatoes, probably Feb, April at a push. I'd probably say March, but you can do it April, you will get something. And you'll harvest probably from July right through to November. It depends on the frost come. Different varieties. Like I say, you get some that are quicker, like Sun Gold's fairly early. And you get things like San Marzano, which I grow, which are quite late to ripen. But the trick is with trying to get your tomatoes right. You don't want a load of foliage and hardly any tomatoes. So you get your tomato plant, as it starts your main stem coming up, and you'll get like a leaf truss like that, and then you'll get a thing that grows here. That's a side shoot or a sucker. That you need to keep an eye. They will keep coming and coming, because you get them trying to come out. Whether it's actually pot or whether it's in the ground, you'll get them trying to come out. Keep chopping them off on a cordon or an indeterminate variety. They're called indeterminate, because that means they'll just grow all over the place if you let them, because they're actually a vine. They're meant to really grow along the ground, and they'll just tap more roots in. Because it's like if you put a clump of soil around the stem, it'll grow roots anywhere along that stem. It'll pump roots out. It's a good thing with tomatoes. You can keep burying them. So if they're a bit leggy, bury them a bit deeper. As long as you're not prone to flooding or anything. But after you get that stem, then you'll get another thing grow. Not as wobbly as that, but that will be your fruit truss. Then you'll get another sort of leafy stem. Same again, side shoot will try and grow. Very rarely they grow here. You do get some random ones that try and grow them along that fruit. Just get rid of them. It's more you get to see the colour of them, the growing tip colour. It's like a pale green. You think that's a fresh, young tip. Snap them off. And pretty much, as soon as this fruit truss here is pretty much all ripe, it doesn't really require this foliage here. It'll naturally yellow off because of lack of light, because there'll be more branches up here by then. But the idea is if you've not got a greenhouse, you're growing outside, aim for like 4 or 5 of these fruit trusses, and then cut the top off, and that will and that will force the energy into fruit production. Otherwise, you're just going to be growing foliage. And like I say, don't leave them on there. It's okay to leave a couple on the lower truss to over-ripen if you want to save some seed. I always find it's better to take from a lower truss. Get them light so they're really going soft, naturally light, as if they've gone over. Because there's less chance of cross-pollination through nature, you know what I mean? Because most tomatoes will slightly differ in their flower opening time, only by a matter of days sometimes. So that's the general principle with tomatoes. If you're doing it in a pot or a grow bag, hanging baskets, some are designed for hanging baskets, as long as it's not too much of obviously they're going to get weight bearing. Sometimes you have to tie supports around to hold, because you get big clumps of tomatoes. So just support it well and it'll be okay. Then there's the bush variety, which is called determinate. It will grow sort of itself. Leave the side shoots on that. But like I say, you need to look at it and go, hang on, there's stacks of fruit on there and none of it's ripening. You need to start sacrificing some of the irregular size or the smaller ones. And then they'll be, aim for, instead of quantity, it's kind of quality. You're better off having, 30 good tomatoes than 100 misshapen tiny ones that are green and not ripening. Feed, they like a bit of feed. Epsom salts do okay, but obviously outdoor ones can get affected by blight, but there are some blight resistant varieties, so just check your local stockist for that sort of thing, and don't be frightened to ask. There's plenty of guys on YouTube that do the blight resistant ones. I've not really done them yet. The outdoor one I used to grow was subarctic plenty. It wasn't blight resistant, it was just a little bit earlier, and it used to grow like a little hedgerow. I've not grown for a few years. I've got a few seeds left from 2014, so I might try and plant a couple just to get a few tomatoes, but more to replenish the seeds. So peppers really, and chilies have never been a strong thing. There's always something that's not really a strong point for most gardeners, and for me it's peppers. But they need a long season. So probably Jan to March, and you go for harvest. I'd probably say June right through to December, because you can bring them in, some of the smaller ones, and they'll quite happily still ripen up on your windowsill. Because there are some nice little compact plants like Prairie Fire, Basket of Fire. They're hot chilies, but the bell peppers, they do need a long time to go through the colours from green, orange, yellow. There are some that are targeted more towards that colour, but if you go out and buy like seeds for a yellow bell pepper, it'll start growing green ones, and you'll think, it's a ripening phase, and that's why they need the long season, because we only have a short hot season. So if you need to try and create a false environment for them if you're doing them early. and treat them a bit mean. They don't like too much water. You can plant the stem down a little bit further on peppers. But yeah, treat them a bit mean. They like that bit of shock. The thing I used to do was I'd let them get plenty of foliage on them, and then I'd let them dry out, and the leaves would drop and they'd sag, and they look like they're about to die. And then I'd feed them and water them, and it's as if they thought, oh my God, I was about to die then. Then they put a load of flowers out, which are then your peppers. It's like it shocks them into hurry up and reproduce. They think the end's coming. And that's it. That's all plants want to do. They want to reproduce. So if they get stressed, or if you get like a shock, that can send them to seed. It's not always your fault. It's just sometimes you can't predict the weather. You might do something, and the weather has a slight heat wave or a cold snap, and it can cause a few problems. Going to things like lettuce now. Loads of different types of lettuce. Hearting lettuce is like the speedy seeds. Speedy seeds, can say they're ready from 30 days, possibly are in great growing conditions. But I tend to say if you're growing anything for a heart lettuce, you're looking at about 80 days from sowing to getting a heart lettuce. That's like an iceberg. Possibly some varieties might take a bit longer. So if you say 80 to 100 days, I follow a lot of things. Same with peas. With peas, I usually follow 80 to 100 days for peas. Brassicas as well, 80 to 100. So lettuce, you 80, that's for a heart. So it's like your icebergs, and it all remains. Or if you're growing for cut and come again, like I started doing, because you don't have to. It doesn't seem to take as much space in the garden. You can sort of just have like 5-6 lettuce and think, right, I don't need to sow anymore because I'll get at least 2 months picking out then. And then you can think, well, they're starting to slow down a bit now. I'll sow some more. So I'd probably say if you're doing cut and come again, 40 to 50 days, and you can start picking. So you'll easily, you'll have easy enough off just growing them, probably 80 to 100 days picking off them. You can kind of pick, as long as you don't pick them, till there's nothing left. You need to leave some foliage on so it can photosynthesize to grow. Obviously, as the season progresses, they'll produce more. But if they dry out or you overpick them, they'll go to shock and send the seed spike up. You can snap the seed spike off when it starts to send a flower spike up. Snap it off, and it'll keep trying to grow little side shoots. And you can it's all edible. Sometimes it might get a bit bitter. Some varieties like endive can be a bit bitter. You can blanch them. That's a whole different subject. Blanching them, covering them to make them sort of go a bit creamy coloured. Right, we'll go on brassicas. Well, the only other allium I didn't say was leeks. Leeks need a long time. You compare to a lot of things, around 80 to 100 days. Leeks, I'd say 170 to 200 days. That's what I think leeks need. So you can sow them sort of, so you got January to December. Obviously you got Jan to December. Sow them, and then you've got, say, April. Sow them now, you'll have them around here sometime. Sow them then, probably anywhere around here, sort of January, February, be ready. Like I say, they're not something you can do 2 lots of in the same spot. So garlic's quite a long one as well. So brassicas, so we'll say broccoli, collie, cabbage, and then sprouts, kale, swede. I'd say swede's in there as well with brassicas. Even though you eat the root, the top is like a brassica really. I think that's most of them. Obviously broccoli, similar to Calabrese. Purple sprouting broccoli, you know, it's a bit different. Purple sprouting broccoli is you kind of do that a bit later, and it grows over the winter, and you get an early picking. I don't tend to do it because, I mean, unless if you can protect the hell out of it, and you've got good ground, and you're on it all the time, it can be hit and miss. Try it by all means. For broccoli, I think that needs 80 to 100 days for the main head, and then you could probably get about another 40 to 50 days picking side shoots. Cauliflowers, I reckon they take about 120 days from sowing to harvest the head. There are different varieties. Same with all these. Some are like early season, some mid, some late, but it just, all that tends to mean sometimes they can tolerate a certain temperature. You know, you'll get ones that can tolerate the cold, so they're longer because they're over the winter. You know, and I think you can grow them at any time of year. That's what I believe, and they'll just grow faster. Cabbage, I'd probably say around 100 days for a cabbage. Less if you're growing them for like just the green leaves. Sprouts. Now, I'd say out of all the brassicas, the sprouts is one that I tend to not include as a brassica sometimes because it can take quite a long time, I find. I'd say sprouts, you're looking at 150 to 200 days for sprouts. Different varieties, like I say, you get some that are late season, you know, an early season, like Trafalgar, you know, for Christmas, like I agree, Maximus, there's Bosworth, Bedford. There's so many different varieties. Kale, you can use a cut and come again. It's a hardy, you can grow it kind of 12 months of the year. But it's a shame I don't really like it, so I do try it now and then and think, oh no. But there's red kale, there's different varieties of kale. There's more now. There used to be just a real tough curly kale, which was chewy, like chewing wood. But that, I reckon you can start picking that from about probably 60 days. Just like I said, don't overstress the plant. Swede, I'd probably say anywhere between 80 to 120. So that's your brassicas. You know, so you need to. So, for instance, if I was doing broccoli, let's say broccoli, I'd say I'd sow it, and I know it's going to be ready. I'd always kind of like give it near maximum, because I don't want a load of stuff ready and it's like, oh, I've nowhere to put it. So it's kind of working back from that day. Or you could say in the middle, you could say at 90 days, to plan back about 6 weeks, or 40 to 50 or 45. So you can sort of say at the 45-day mark, so 45 days after sowing your first broccoli, you want to sow your next batch. That's if you want to just take the head and put some out somewhere else to start them off. But if you want them in the same bed, it's kind of like, I'd probably say when you get to about 60 days from sowing that, then you sow some more, and you do more collie around then as well. And that way then you've got something, one out, one in. That's them. What else is there? There's probably like loads of little random things. I mean, I don't bother growing things like Chinese cabbage or pak choy and stuff. Pak choy, slugs love it. There's loads of different stuff. I mean, it's just finding the time to sort of, and the space to go around. I'm going to allocate space to growing things like kohlrabi and stuff like that. Something different. But like parsnips need a long kind of growing time. And the seeds can be a bugger to germinate. Like carrots, sow probably March right through to probably July. I think probably some of your later sowings you can do. March sowing can be ready from May. In July, obviously, you can leave them in right over winter. They'll be fine in the soil over winter, providing they don't flood. Parsnips tend to sort of February, March start them, and you'd harvest them probably August time. But same again with them, you can leave some of them in and harvest them the following year, provided it doesn't get wet. So sweet corn, got sweet corn. Sweet corn, variety I grow is Swift, and it's an F1. So the whole thing about this F1 thing, if you've got in a controlled environment a couple of plants, sometimes they do it with a few plants, it's built up over time, it's genetically sort of modified in some ways, but basically they've taken the good qualities of both and mixed them together, and the seeds from whichever one has created a hybrid of the two. So you sow that and it grows and you get your crop, whatever it is. It could be tomatoes, whatever. And them seeds in there, you think, I'll save some of them. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get that. You probably end up getting one of these, whichever. And over time, the one of them will be predominantly stronger genetics, and it will overtake. Like some potatoes are made up of multiple varieties. So that's what the F1 means. It just means it's a hybrid. And the seeds saved from an F1 probably won't be the same variety. There'll be a parent plant or something that was in their making. But like I say, sweet corn, you've got different varieties for different lengths of season, really. But sweet corn, you sow it April, plant out in June. It's kind of ready August, September. Anything like courgettes. So that's sow April. Probably start hacking them away June, right through until they either mildew gets them or the frost does. So you kind of probably say September for that. Cucumbers, fairly similar. Market more, a bit more hardier. Market more, you can grow them outside. But cucumbers are about the same. This is your frost tender date, April. You've got your sort of February, March. They're what you'd say are hardy. They can tolerate. They're not frost hardy. They're hardy. Some of them, like some of the brassicas, will tolerate frost, but they're just hardy. And then you've got your April, probably May, some of May. That's what they kind of call frost tender. That means get a nice little seedling about 6 inch high, one night of cold, kill it. It could have taken you 4 weeks. If you sold them back in March, you thought, they're doing really well, and all of a sudden you get a cold snap mid-May, plant's gone, dead, start again. You've lost 8 weeks. And 8 weeks in the growing season of like 20 odd weeks is a bit of a kick in the head, really. So you can try and minimise that just by being careful when you're sowing stuff. And sometimes you can have, like I have, polysols full of seedlings, and I'll nip out in the garden and think, it's dropping a bit cold, and I'll keep an eye on the thermometer, see what it's going down to. Once it gets down to something like maybe 4 degrees, and it starts dropping even more, I'm thinking, right, get stuff in. And I've had this kitchen worktop full of seedlings just because of the cold, especially with tomatoes, because when you're hardening them off, I try and keep them out, get them outside as early as I can to get the natural day-night cycle, because they need a night time. And the windowsill's all right, and then when it goes dark, you've got your lights on. They'll still try and grow towards your light and get leggy. So they need to be covered, they need dark. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've missed. I think that's about it really. For durations, as I say, a big number for me that I follow in a lot of cases is that. But obviously from that you can either go, you know, to 60 to 120. That's your massive sort of from sort of seed to plate, you know. Things that will grow less than this, possibly radishes, you know, radish can be ready in 30 to 40. You know, if you want slightly bigger ones, then leave them a bit longer. You know, but this does cover, you know, quite a, you know, this is getting into like potato territory up there. But you've also got potato territory, you can have potatoes around here. You know, but this is sort of like the heart of it that I go off, that 80 to 100 days. I can pretty much guarantee you, I saw a broccoli seed that 100 days after, or they're very, very close to that within a matter of days, that head is ready. You know, and I've kind of over time, cauliflower will be ready, but if it's had a little bit of a chill, it will always be maybe a week or two after that. Follow, you know, same as my onions will be all around. Onions kind of fall just sort of this area, just after the 100 days, when you sowed the seed. Which obviously when you've thrown them from set, they've had a couple of months growth on them already, so that, you know, they don't need as long. But they still need quite a while. But like I say, just there's too many variables to be too exact. So you know, you've got to think of like your usable growing time outside, safe. Not for everything, but for some things I would say is kind of, you know, mid-March to maybe, I won't say really, but I'd probably October. Yeah, mid-October, because I have seen frost. Beginning of October a few years ago, I was fishing 1st October, and it went down to about -4 in the night. It was a random one, you know, cold snap. Year after I went, the same day, it was 20 odd degrees. You know, it was a heat wave. It happens. It just depends on the weather. But that's your big growing time, and this time between then and sort of March is your planning and your preparation time. Ideally, try and get your prep work done, you know, by December, so it's got a good at least 3 months for things to settle, the worms to start churning the stuff into the ground for you, and then you know, you can just go to your weeds will have started growing by then when the time you start planting out, so you can go out, scuff the weeds off, you know. So if you've got your sort of nice posh soil that you left it in October, and then you think, I'll just go down the plot, and it's like middle of March or April, you've got your bed and it's weeds growing all over it, grass, scuff them off, and you plant your plants in. By the time this is trying to grow back, your plant's created a canopy, so that will kind of win the competition. Onions is a bit different. A lot of light gets through onions, and onions don't like competing with weeds, so just keep an eye on that. Right, I've got a bit of a diagram of me allotment here. It's a bit of a rough drawing like, but I'll give you the idea. So I'd usually come on my plot at this end, and then my shed's usually here with my compost bins, a couple of small beds here, which are like 2 foot by 10 foot, and then my fruit cage. Nothing really changes down there. These 2 beds are empty at the moment. They're sort of this area, so I don't know what I'm going to put in them as yet. I don't know. There's kind of overspills or whatever comes along. Right, so I usually have kind of fixed thing that I usually grow at the plot, obviously, because, you know, limited times I can get there. So it's kind of like, it's just a growing area. I don't go there to sit and relax, really. I just go there, get as much out of it as I can, because I can't grow 12 months a year. So I'll do a list of what I commonly grow. Start off, obviously, spuds, right at the top here. Spuds. I usually do 3 to 6 varieties. Just depends. I should imagine There'll be 6 varieties this year. I can get 6 rows in this bed. This bed is 21 by 15. So I get like usually anywhere between 90 and 120 spuds depending on what I'm growing. These 4 beds are 10.5 foot by 5. These 2 are 5 foot by 6.5. This is where my asparagus is at the moment. Still don't know what's happening with that yet. I think that's 12 foot by 3 foot, that bed. so I've got potatoes I grow. Obviously, I'll just put brassicas, and that is collie, broccoli, what else? Cabbage. Probably, usually, sometimes do 2 varieties of cabbage, usually. Possibly swede, so I'll put swede. That's it for brassicas, really. So I'll just put a little line on the spuds, line on the brassicas. Then we have alliums, so we've got garlic, spring onions, and then I'll just put onions. And I'll just put there R/W. That's kind of both red and white onions. That's probably all leeks. I don't tend to do them down the plot because of rust. Leeks is something I do, and I don't do them every year. Just if I've got some space, I'll put them in. And we have peas, beans. You're starting to get sort of like a family now, you know what I mean? You've got your brassicas, alliums, your legumes. And then sweet corn, which is like a miscellaneous. Sweet corn is a member of the grass family. You don't really have to stick with any crop rotations as such as sweet corn. Just shove it in a gap. You know, you're not too bad. So you've got me optional overspills and extra bits. I usually do sweet corn. Sweet corn, beetroot. Beetroot, I'm not sure I've got any seeds actually for beetroot. I think I have. Possibly, what else? Well, there's probably some lettuce. I usually do a bulk of lettuce in the back garden. If I'm doing cut and cook. If I'm doing any full hearts, I might do them at the allotment. Possibly turnips. Possibly courgettes. What else can we do? Celery. That's kind of the bulk of what I try and get at the allotment. Sometimes multiple. Right, so we'll start off with, because I have no plan, I've not planned anything yet. I know all I've got so far is I've got my garlic in tubs in the polytunnel, and I've sown some seeds. Where they're going to end up, I have no idea yet. I've not even thought about that. My spuds aren't even here yet, so I need to. They're coming a bit later. You know, probably hopefully this week, so I can start checking them off. Like I say, spuds. I'll put 6 rows of spuds in this bed. I wasn't going to do spuds really in that bed, but as soon as I put a lot of the compost on, I'll give them a go. If I was going to rest it for a year in there and put something else in. Now, obviously, that's going to be separated, that. So I should imagine if, I mean, I've got a netting here. If I keep the netting up, just put a little line there, not straight, but it's, get the idea. And that's going to be peas. So I can probably get rows there, probably do something like, so this is 6 rows. Usually I'll say their first earlies, second, probably another second, and then these two usually main crop. So I'll be looking at probably something like 24 first earlies, you know, spaced, you know, probably 8 inches to a foot, you know. Second earlies, if I just sort of like round that to about 18, give them a little bit more space, 18, main croppers, probably 17 of each of them. Roll spacings, these usually sort of, you know, 2 foot, and then as it gets to be mains, they get about 2.5 foot apart. And I find I can just about fit that in. I used to try and squeeze another row down here, but I've sacrificed that for the peas. Because peas is something I can never grow enough of, to be honest. So that kind of sums that bed up. But I know this area, where the first earlies are, will come free June. That gives me probably a good 2 foot by 20 foot strip. So that's an extra overspill area. What I'm going to put there yet, I don't know. I might cover it. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. And then this sort of next area, it starts to empty from, you know, July and August. So the bed's usually completely empty come September. Which, if it's nice, I could put a green manure in. I can't overwinter stuff really because it gets too waterlogged in that bed, because that is the only bed on there that isn't a raised bed. The rest are all kind of on a no dig basis. Right, so I think last year, you know, in these 2 beds I had brassicas, got some brassicas in here, maybe over there as well, but they've had resting time in between. So I'm going to do brassicas this year. Probably I might use one of these beds for brassicas down here, because I know I can get 15 brassicas in one of them, because I do them in a 15-inch. They get a 15-inch square, and I can either get 32 in one of these beds or 15 in one of them. So, you know, I didn't do the 32. I gave them a bit more space last year. I think I went for 24 in each bed. So it just depends, you know. I might do a bed of collie, bed of broccoli, and a bed of cabbage, or a small bed of cabbage. You know, it seems like a lot of area. Because this, you know, that had meat, onions in it that year. You know, so I might move my onions over there this year. But I'll say this could alter depending on what bed's going to go where. But the idea should be pretty much the same. You know, regarding that, I might say I'm going to plant some in this bed and it might end up being in that bed. So we'll just go with it for now. So in this bed, say if I put, so bear in mind I've sowed everything. Just put a little line down there. Get rid of some of these marks. So I've sowed most of my seeds. I've not sown yet, but the big sowing date is kind of 16th of the 2nd, 16th February. That's when I'll do brassicas, spring onions, some lettuce. That's it really, probably, because you know, obviously there's some onions, no onions, probably beetroot as well. If we want any early turnips, possibly. Brussels sprouts, I won't be doing at the plot. I might do, I don't know, I might pull Brussels sprouts in the asparagus bed. I don't know yet if I'm doing the sprouts this year. We'll play that one by ear. So these beds are going to remain pretty empty, apart from wherever I put the garlic. If the garlic's ready, it'll go up in March. But otherwise, a lot of this isn't going to get planted until, weather permitting, it'll either be the 10th or the 17th of April. They're both Saturdays. So, like I said, it's usually the second weekend in April, weather permitting. I'm not going to go and plant it if it's waterlogged and throwing it down. I'll wait for a dry couple of days. It usually takes, a good 2 or 3 days, and a lot of it's planted up. So I might actually move things around a little bit. I'll say, for instance, obviously that's going to be brassicas this year. So I will say I'm going to put broccoli in. That's going to go in April. Right, so that's from a February sowing. So if I'm putting that in, so if I put April the 10th, I'll harvest that, I should imagine, probably by the middle of June. That'll be out, bed empty. So if I put cauliflower in this bed, shouldn't do really, it's got brassicas in at the moment, but it should be okay. I've got collie in there, same again, April 10th. They tend to take a little bit longer, I find, so I'm going to give myself a bit more space. I'm going to say there, July. Alliums, not put my alliums in that bed. They don't tend to do great in that bed. Nothing does that great in that bed for some reason, because there's neighbours' sheds over there, but we'll see how it goes. So we've got alliums, they'll go out. That's basically onions, just onions in that bed. Be about just over 100 of them, something like that, I should imagine. And they'll go out April 10th. If they germinated okay, and all goes well, I expect them to be out also July. I'll put 15th to cover myself, but I'm half expecting it to be first week of July, they'll be out. And then say, put in this bed, I could put garlic. They're going to go up there. I'll just put March. Right. They should be out by July 15th. So all these beds are coming available. So you need to start thinking about what you're going to put in. So if I say in that bed there, I'm going to put, I'll put cabbage in that bed. What's cabbage? Probably the Primo 2. I'll put in that bed. Or the Golden Acre, whatever you want to call it. So they'll go up there also April 10th. Could be the 17th, like I say, so it's kind of probably no earlier than the 10th. And I know I'll probably put the full 15 in that, but there's nothing to say I might do, say, 10 cabbages and 5 swede or something like that. These are all optional because they require the same spacings. I could either do 32 broccoli or 24 broccoli. I don't know. If I want to bunch them up a bit and save a bit of room at the end and put some cabbages at the end, I might end up putting, some cabbages. I might put 8 cabbage and 24 broccoli and cram them up like that in that bed. That's always an option, a possibility. But the principle's the same. It's just depending on the weather and what the beds are like. So it leaves this bed. This bed's been a bit funny this last couple of years. Sweet corn didn't do very well in it last year. So the sweet corn I might share with the garlic. I might put the sweet corn at this end of the bed. That'll be the sweet corn. So that means I can take some lettuce in between the gaps. And that'll go out also April. Because obviously when I'm doing my sweet corn, it's if I say I'm going to do, I don't know, say 20 or something, put 4 like in a grid like that. You see me do it before. I know where I usually put these like cane caps, these like mushroom caps. I push them in the ground to mark when my sweet corn's going. And that'll go out in June. But in between, in the middle of each of these squares, I'll plant a lettuce. Just something to grow, cover the ground that I can pick at. Could be radish, anything like that. Spring onions, they're going. You know, because the spring onions, a lot of them will be coming out sort of June, July. So the sweet corn won't be that high by then. So yeah, lettuce, I'll put lettuce, possibly spring onions. Spring onions you can do successionally, so you don't want to be doing like 40 because you'll never eat all 40 bunches, because I do them in a bunch. So that leaves this bed here. So I might end up putting beans and that. If I put beans in there, or courgettes, they won't go until June. Possibly maybe beetroot. So that's a bit of a miscellaneous bed, that. So I tend to do garlic and sweet corn in these beds quite often. So that one, the asparagus bed, no idea yet. I have got some more raspberry canes coming in March sometime, so I might end up putting the raspberry canes in there. I don't know yet. Also, I've got somewhere I need to sow peas, so I could put a couple of rows of peas in there. You know, because I've got this 20-foot net of peas, so that's like an initial planting. But then I need to make sure, so come June the 15th, hopefully this broccoli will be out, but it will create side shoots. When I take the heads, they'll get side shoots, and I'll keep picking them side shoots until they either don't do very well or the cauliflower's finished, and that will empty 2 beds. And then I will probably do a complete repeat of that. Whatever I've grown in them, it'll have the complete same in there. They'll get pulled out, quick scuff over, you know, maybe a bit of feed, something like that, a bit of like calcium or seaweed or something like that, chicken manure pellets thrown on, mulch, grass clippings, just to get a bit of nitrogen, because, you know, the brassicas, they are quite hungry. And a lot of people would actually put the brassicas, which I could do, I could put a row of brassicas in my potato bed, but it's covering them. I mean, I have nets ready for these, you know, because when your brassicas, your potatoes come out, you can follow them with late brassicas, leeks, obviously beetroot, spring onions, all that sort of stuff. So that's all optional. You know, I've got this to spill over into should I need it. I don't want to leave it open. I'll either sow green manure, cover it, or grow something in it. That's my options for that, depending on how wet the year is. So these were all sown 16th of February. That's when I sowed them. That bed, this bed, that bed as well. They've been sown. So I'll put 16th to the 1st if they've germinated. Garlic, that was the same, 16th to the 1st. So I need to work out now when to sow. Ready again. So I'm looking at, you know, July, mid-July. So I could sow something I don't really like sowing too much in June, but if I do, I sort of sow things and keep them in a semi-shaded area because the sun is your worst enemy. You know, it can really dry stuff out. So you need to make sure you've got good root ball on them, good pot of soil, so when you put it in, it's got a bit of reserve so it can tap some roots into the bed. You know, when you need to flood your beds, if it's been a dry summer, give them a right good wetting down when you've harvested stuff to get it all going again. So I'd look at sowing things, so for instance, from the 25th of May, that will be a re-sowing to refill that bed, that bed, that bed, that bed. I've sown before that anyway. The other date I'll have sown will have been the date that this goes out. I'll have sown some things around then as well, which are my frost tender things. So that's things like sweet corn, beans, courgettes. You know, and the beans and courgettes and sweet corn, they're going to be in the ground till sort of September, October. So I need to find something quick, radish and stuff like that, and gap fillers are in them beds. So this is going to come free also, probably say July. You know, so it's completely emptied. So I need to do a lot of sowings during May really, which is not a bad time. That if I was going to do some, say for instance, Brussels sprouts, I'd put them into bigger pots, probably going into like 4-inch pots to try and keep them back as long as I can, to plant them out the minute a bed comes ready. You know, I wouldn't put as many in that because they do need a bit more spacing. I'd probably put maybe, I'd probably do them in like a 5-a-dice type thing, you know, probably like 1, 2, do it like that. So they get a good airflow. Some supports, because obviously with the curved netting, it's a bit tighter at the edges, the height-wise, you know, unless if you can find a variety that's short. I can't remember if it's Bedford Champion or something, or Bosworth or something, that they're quite a short plant. Things like Trafalgar and Maximus. They're quite a tall plant, so you really do need like at least a metre, 4 foot high net. So that's all options. So if I write in this bed my sort of sowing dates, so obviously I've sown stuff already in the last video, so if I say 16th of February, that's the sowing date. And then I'll just put, I'll go for kind of, you know, middle-ish sort of dates if I can. So, and then I'll say 15th of April, I'll sow a load of stuff. No, I'll put 10th of April. And then probably, if I say from 25th of May, and that kind of covers, and I tend to not do much then until I'm going to think about doing late sowings, which gets into, you know, July and August. These are your last sort of sowing dates for things, like your endives, late lettuce. You can still grow beans, start them in July, like dwarf French beans. So as little spaces, like the garlic could come out, I could fill that full of dwarf French beans, you know, and it's a quick pinch crop. As soon as they're done, cover the bed, you know, top it or cover it and shut it down for the winter then. And then I kind of select, if I'm going to grow anything in the winter months, it tends to be usually these beds because to get the most sunshine. It does get a bit wet here and really wet there. I think it's because the manure heat from the next plot is kind of the other side of the fence and it floods in between. So I think it gets a bit rich, that soil, to be honest. It seems to do okay with like lettuce and stuff the other year. Beans might like it and courgettes might like it. We'll see. You know, but I'll have some courgettes at home, I'll have some beans at home, and I'll have probably some beetroot at home. You know, so that I've got the whole back garden as well, you know, to think about. That's usually overspill. You know, I've got three beds in the back garden and then one big bed. And I've got a few small beds as well, and the polytunnel and pots and that. So there's plenty of room to kind of make things up. If you've got an overspill, thinking, oh, I've not got enough room for that, I'll shove it in the garden, or I might dedicate a bed in the back garden to try and new things out, new varieties. Like I've got different variety of onions that I can try out, different varieties of cauliflower, just to see how they perform. Because when they're in the back garden, I can observe them and check them and watch them. When they're at the plot, I might go to the plot, say, say for instance, I might go like next week and prune my blueberries. I might not go back there again for another five weeks. It just depends. Busy time around the plot for me is obviously around April, and then it's kind of June, the harvesting glut, get stuff planted, come away, do a bit more sort of August, September. The back garden's kind of consistently all the time. So I mean things like swede, like I said, they can go in with anywhere, because a lot of these are going to be netted. I have nets over that, a net over that. I'll have definitely a net over that, because cabbage whites. I don't really suffer too much with onions, but you never say never. With birds pecking tops. So you just have to bear in mind, whatever you're into planting, if you're going to put a net over something that's going to have sweet corn in, are they going to be out by the time your sweet corn's high enough for it hits the top at net? So sweet corn's obviously going to cast a bit of shadow. It's not too bad because the sun kind of goes across, a bit of an angle like that really, so it does get a bit of light. And at the end of the day, in the peak of the summer, that's when that gets the most light. The sun's high in the sky, then it gets probably lunchtime, it starts hitting that bed. And this is a little bit sheltered here, so it might do okay for beans until they get a chance to grab. Otherwise they get blown about everywhere. I could always, in this bed here, put a few little wigwams up and grow beans up them. Nothing is completely set in stone, because there's, variables in the way of weather. Right, so that's it for this little video. I just did it completely off the cuff. I thought, trying to sit down and think, how am I going to do this sort of video? And the possibilities are endless, of how long you can go in, how in depth you can go. Because everyone has a question to ask, and some people don't explain things, but just don't be frightened of trying something. If you get it wrong, try again. Just do it different. That's how I had to learn. It was because it's all right for a book says it like this, and you think, okay, but it doesn't work. Maybe that author lives somewhere different. It's just like a lot of things that grow in this country won't grow elsewhere, and same as things that grow abroad won't grow here, because it's just the climate's different. You've got to think of your average temperatures and what will work, and once you find out what works, stick with it. Don't if it works, there's nothing to fix. It's not broken, it's working, so keep at it like that. And then have a little element of thinking out, well, I can take a chance in half of that bed, use that half a bed, and if things do okay, then they can be incorporated in to your sort of main growing sort of area. But it just takes time. It's not something you can do 1 year and go, I've had a great year, everything's done brilliant. There's always something that doesn't quite do as well as you'd hoped. But that's usually down to weather, and the weather difference is there's different diseases that come around with different types of weather, and obviously different types of bugs. There's certain bugs that they don't hatch every year. They might have cycles where they hatch every 4 or 5 years. You think 1 year, you think, hang on, I had a good year, for the last few. Why has it gone bad? Because there's been a mad hatch of something that's attacked them, or something's come by nesting, voles, pigeons. They're all pests, but they're all part of the whole system, because if you didn't have the pigeons and the pests, there'd be other pests that'd just be there. So you need a happy medium, and trying to protect the best way you can. You can't stop every element, so you can just try and get the upper hand, so you can have the majority. You've always got to grow a bit for you and a little bit for everything else as well. But the main thing is you don't give up, just keep at it, and if one variety doesn't work, try something else. And even if you just think, oh, all I can grow is lettuce, so what? You're growing your own food, so it doesn't matter. Just keep trying. and you'll figure it out. I don't think there's any book or YouTube video that could really say, this is what you do, don't do it like that, because there is no right or wrong. It's what, if it works for you, great. You know, then you cracked it. Don't bother changing it if it's working for you. If you found a variety that's reliable for you, grows every year, carry on with it. So on that note, I'm going to get myself a cup of tea, and I'm not going to. The sun's out today, but we've had a bit of snow, so I'm not intending on going out and doing anything today. I think I'm just going to chill out. So thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one, which will be the next couple of weeks, which will be sweet peas and some bits and bobs. So see you now. Bye bye.